Dave here. We're going to hit on a lot of the stuff in today's issue, and we will have some time for questions if folks have super chat questions they want to bring up, and I will also have some other questions that I've just been gathering over the past few weeks if we get to them. How is your Friday going? We're recording actually a little bit later than we usually do, so it's actually early evening.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. It's just like I got a lot of birthday messages and stuff, and so it's Bill Dundee's birthday today, as I always remember, because Lance Russell used to call me up on this day every year right after he talked to Bill Dundee. So that's that, and I guess I'll be seeing you later.
Yeah, we're gonna hang out tonight for your birthday and other October birthdays of people that we know. So October's like a busy month for birthdays in our little friend circle.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, very much so, actually. Yeah.
Okay, so let's dig into some of the things in the Observer. And I think I wanted to kind of start with the Russell Dream stuff. And I know you don't have a number as far as pay-per-view buys, but is there like a general area where you think that they're going to fall?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably going to be slightly below the last one, but not. I mean, what it is the systems that were unencumbered, which I guess would mean HBO Max and some of the other ones, most of the other ones really were probably along the lines of the last show, which is really good, actually, because last show did really good. And then, but Amazon Prime had a lot of refunds, so which was a problem having nothing to do with AEW, and really not even Amazon Prime. That was the AWS thing, which just short-circuited a lot of stuff, including Nielsen ratings and a million other things. But it was just they refunded a lot of people because their show was cut off, which is interesting because I mean, people would have paid $50 for the show and gotten a 4-hour show.
Yeah.
But it got cut off early in the Moxley and Darby Allin match, and then Comcast had some issue with people ordering, so Comcast was down. And
it's wild that there are pay-per-view problems in 2025.
Well, the crazy one is that there were 3, none of which had anything to do with AEW, and none of which had anything to do with the other 2. So it was like, like in most places, everything was fine. But, there was the one problem, which was, way out of everyone's control. And then there was the Comcast problem, which I don't really understand, but it's probably similar to the problem we have, almost every month with UFC. And then the HBO Max sound thing, which was very minor, but did exist in the pre-show. I mean, I remember we weren't there yet, but we were watching the pre-show. And we switched back, thank God, it's on TNT. So we just switched to TNT and watched most of the pre-show on TNT, and it was fine. There was no problems at all. So, yeah, but overall, I mean, I guess overall it would be good. I would consider it good. The numbers are holding up. It wasn't that long since the last show. It's obviously not going to be like the All In, obviously, but the HBO Max thing with a lower price. Well, that's not actually that's sort of not the case.
It's not going to be lower with the new prices of that.
Right. Well, yeah, it's going to be like $1 more. But I guess if you have it for a year, it's
well, for me, I have the top level subscription price. So what am I going to go to 22? So now the $39.99 plus the 22, it's not really as much of a bargain.
No, it's not. So and then everything there, it's like like everything. Like there's no long term. In 2 years, what happens? I mean, HBO Max and TBS TNT will possibly be different companies by next year. They'll possibly, maybe even probably be owned by somebody else and be in completely different forms. And God only knows what that's going to mean in things way more important than wrestling. But again, new management and who knows? The ratings thing obviously couldn't have come at a more volatile time for AEW. Because before the one thing is that the ratings were really good. They were pretty safe. If last year's numbers. And again, this year was actually up if you factor in Max. We don't know how much it's up, but it's up substantially. So that's good until the new ratings come in, and now all of a sudden it's like it's a shot in the dark. And the key is with the declines are so heavily in 18 to 34, and so that makes the 18 to 49 number go down, like 30%, 18 to 34 number down like 50%, and that's across the board. That's not just AEW, that's WWE, and that's also UFC so far since this new thing came in. And so that ruins a lot of the value of all 3 properties. Of course, with UFC, it doesn't matter. They signed an incredible deal, and WWE their deals are for years and years and years to come. So there's plenty of time for them to work their way out or whatever. But AEW, I mean, it's like they're strong till the end of 2027, and then after that, it depends on management, it depends on ratings. I mean, the one thing that I think is positive is the pay-per-view. It appears that a lot of the pay-per-view buys are coming on Max, and so the Max people, it's like it is a revenue source once a month of that AEW is bringing in. So that absolutely helps them. So that's positive. But you just never know. I mean, you just never know with new management and what they would want to spend, what they think of wrestling. Even the numbers now are better than most things on television, but not but it's a big drop from whatever it is since the new system came in. So we're talking like if you go back 2 months, I mean, I would have said like whatever. It's like the ratings are good enough, everything's gonna be fine. But then everything took a drop. So now it's like, I don't know, maybe with Max they're still good enough, but we don't really know.
Did you see the statistic as far as what NBC was able to sell their ad slots for versus what TNT was selling their NBA ad slots for last year?
I did not see that, no.
It was a random tweet, so it's not like I verified the information or anything, but it was something like let's say TNT was getting 50,000 per 30 seconds or something. Like
that sounds legit because AEW was getting probably 19. I mean, when AEW's peak ratings, they were getting about 35, but your ad number is based virtually identically to your 1849 number, although for the same number of 1849 people, an NBA show is still going to get a lot more than a pro wrestling show because it's the NBA.
But even before the NBA on NBC, obviously being on broadcast is a little bit different, they were able to get, before a single game for that opening night, I think they were able to get 130,000.
Well, I think everyone knows that the NBC games are going to be way up from the TNT games. And opening night did a giant number, wasn't it? Wasn't it close to 6 million viewers? I think between
the first game was like 5.8 million, and the second game was like 5.2 or something like that.
Yeah. So they did really big on Tuesday night, and I presume they did really big on I don't know who had the games Wednesday. Wednesday everybody opened though, so that's why I think the AEW number is probably going to be hurt. I don't have it yet, but I think it's going to be hurt because I think that there were 13 teams that had 13 games, so I had like 26 teams, right? Is that right? But there were a whole bunch of teams that had their opening game. So even if the games are not on national TV, that's all the big local markets because the biggest markets all the NBA teams.
ESPN had 2 games Wednesday, 2 games Thursday, I think.
Okay, I think. So they had so one of the games. Well, they'd be going head to head with AEW for opening night of teams, and then the other thing is there's all the local market games. So yeah, and did they even have baseball last night at all?
No, baseball's not until tonight.
Okay, so that's and baseball's going to be really hard this week, right? Because I mean, this is always the hardest week of the year, for weeknight cable, because you've got the start of the NBA, you've got NHL, and you've got baseball playoffs, all going on, along with college football, along with NFL on Thursdays and Mondays, and obviously Sundays, and so it's pretty much murderous, really. This period right now.
So the Wrestle Dream show, the thing that I find interesting is if they were able to do that solid of a number for a show that it kind of existed because it was on the schedule rather than that they built for it with like all of these feuds peaking. Because as we coming out of it, it looks like we're getting a lot more of the same. Like that says a lot about that pay-per-view buying audience. Because for me, as I was on paper looking at that show, I'm like, yeah, there's going to be some good wrestling on it, but the feuds outside of Moxley and Darby didn't feel like there was a reason to have these big matches. But that's a pretty consistent pay-per-view audience. I think that says a lot for the people who are buying these shows right now.
Well, I think one of the things is for AEW pay-per-views for their audience is this year. I mean, really, this year the shows they delivered one great show after another. I mean, like the show. It's actually like I've never seen anything, even with I guess maybe New Japan at its peak. When they were from whatever it was 2015 to 2020, that period where the New Japan big shows were really, really good. But even with New Japan, I think the main events of New Japan were comparable to AEW, or at least close. But from start to finish, there were some cards at that level, but not really. I mean, AEW, it's just the depth is just incredible. And I think that's probably what is keeping the pay-per-view strong. It's not keeping the other numbers strong, but it's keeping the pay-per-view strong. I think that the people kind of know that, like, well, if you're someone who's going to pay $50, you're going to get your $50 worth based on just the fact you're going to get incredible wrestling. And the fact that I think that because month after month, year after year, they've been pretty consistent at that, they've been able to maintain a pretty loyal pay-per-view audience. That's what it seems, or something, whatever it is, because it's still not the same people. It's different. I mean, I don't have stats from last year. I do have stats from 22, 23, and it was very different people buying each show. But the numbers, they vary, obviously. They vary more before. I think now, I think that the thing now is, and I think it came on the last show, and I think that it also extended to the show, is that a lot of people who are already HBO Max subscribers or HBO Max subscribers so they can watch the TV, I think that the feeling you're getting a bargain probably caused them to buy the last show, because the last show did much better than I expected. And I thought, like, whenever you do the cut rate thing, it always works at first, but in the long run, you end up back where you were, just with a lower price. So anyway, well, should I take it or no? I mean, it's interesting.
The inside joke here is that Dave and I are kind of wondering when the AEW Dynamite ratings are coming out, so that's why he's wondering.
I'm sure. I'm wondering if that's what it is.
Well, I assume if that's what it is, we'll probably see them shortly, and I'll keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what's also interesting to me about these pay-per-views is, like, I think there's so much variety on the shows as far as wrestling styles and like wrestling matches that you're looking forward to see. Because even if you didn't like the main event, which I wasn't a giant fan of, not because of the where they were going, because it was actually tamer than I thought. I just didn't like the finish. I thought the finish was kind of lame. But even if you didn't, there was still enough watching the rest of the show to where you're like, okay, so that thing didn't end the way that I thought it should have, or whatever. Here's all these other things that were very much worth watching. And to that extent, I'm still waiting for it to happen. They're not burning out the audience. I mean, we had to go outside and stretch a couple times, but like, as I've said before, one of my worries about going forward with these shows is that I've been leaning towards like, oh, I kind of want to do this thing with my family versus sitting on the couch for 5 hours. And at some point that may happen, but it hasn't happened yet because people are sitting through these shows and I think they're happy with their buy. And if you are getting your money's worth on pay-per-view, which in the history of pay-per-view, that has not always been the case, because I'm literally going down the rabbit hole in 1993 right now with WCW. And like every pay-per-view is like, why did they even have this show? But today you don't really have that problem. So
well, I mean, the one thing is that there is, I mean, it's so funny because people go, oh, why are there so many high star ratings? It's like, because the wrestling is so much better now. And a lot of it is the mentality of the wrestlers, number one. I mean, these wrestlers go out there, I mean, before the wrestlers went out there and they, did their thing and everything, but there was not, I mean, there were some guys, like Ric Flair or Macho Man or whatever, right? Those type of guys, Ricky Steamboat, like those guys would go out there on the pay-per-views and it was really important to give you a great show. And they did, but you didn't get that up and down the card, number one. And number two, and the most important thing is it was funny because I was talking to somebody about this morning, and it's like, before, when you had a pay-per-view show on a Saturday night, the fact is that for these guys, it's like, okay, it's a big match, but I'm flying somewhere, I'm wrestling on Sunday, and I'm flying somewhere, I'm wrestling on Monday. You know what I mean? So it's like, there's no time to, when I wrestled the night before, it's like, there's no time to really prepare. This is just what I do, go from city to city to city, and this is a bigger show, but it's like, I got to make sure, I can't go and hurt my ankle, I can't go and hurt my knee, because I can't miss these dates. So I'm not saying you're not holding back, you're working a certain style though. Whereas now, and it's actually, in some ways, the one thing I don't like about this, the drive that these guys have, and we see it with the high injury rate, it's not sustainable. The old style, even though those guys were working incredible amounts of matches, it was a sustainable style in the sense that you can go year after year and work that style and put on entertaining matches. Now they're going so crazy with this stuff that, it's like, I mean, just an example, like the Wednesday Dynamite, one of the reasons after these pay-per-views that they don't announce cards is because you got to wait to find out who's hurt to see if they can work by Wednesday. Whereas before, occasionally somebody would get hurt, but it was rare. And, you didn't wait for like the Sunday pay-per-view to be over before you started booking, Raw on Monday. You know what I mean? It was just like, you just expect everyone to be okay. And now there's not that expectation because people go so far. And, it's in some ways, like I say, it's like, it's not sustainable. I don't think you want the injury rate at the level that it is now. But on the flip side, when you get a pay-per-view, I mean, you're going to have, plus again, there's so much, I was like the nature of the talent is very different. The feedback is immediate all over the place. Before it's like you had a bad match or an average match, it's like nobody really talked about it. I mean, it was like the newsletters wouldn't know that, but now it's like everyone does everywhere. Nobody wants to be have a bad performance. And the crowd expectations are pretty high, so you've got to fulfill that. So,
essentially, your competition for these AEW pay-per-views is the previous couple of AEW pay-per-views.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the reasons. So the negative on this is that, like people say, it's like if you can probably remember some of the great matches of the 80s and 90s that are nowhere close to the level of 30 matches every year here, maybe 50. but we're getting them every week, and then and it's like, yeah, great, Okada and Bandito had that great TV match on Wednesday. We're probably gonna see a match just as good somewhere this weekend. I mean, there's so many big shows, and we have access to so many big shows, and we have access to so many people all over who are trying to make names. And how do you make a name if you're not in WWE on WWE television? You make a name by doing outstanding performances in the ring, because that's just the only way to make a name now. So
Is it possible though that by leaning so far into your pay-per-view shows that maybe you are leaving some viewers who don't really watch Dynamite as much? Because we had this conversation when we were at your house, and I looked around the room. John hadn't watched Dynamite. Rubio, the two Rubios hadn't watched Dynamite since the last pay-per-view. Jeremy had kind of watched half of it. I've watched all of them because of what I do. And that would have been the case a year or two before. Everyone would have been watching Dynamite weekly and be caught up on everything. But now they're like, we just need to watch the pay-per-view. We don't need to watch the TV to keep up with this company.
that's always been part of the thing there is the fact that as time goes on and professional wrestling's on for 2 hours almost every single night, you know what I mean? It's impossible to keep up with everything.
Yeah, it's a small sample size, but I just found it interesting that everybody in that room except for you and I had not watched that previous week's Dynamite all the way through.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, look at the ratings across the board for everyone. Even if you throw out the new way they're figured, although for Dynamite, it's not necessarily the case because you did have the max change and everything. But for most of the shows, NXT's held up well. I mean, obviously SmackDown's way down from last year, even on USA, and Raw, the change of platforms was a killer for numbers of viewers. I mean, it's not a killer in other ways, and it's probably, I think it's still probably, it's probably still going to be good in the long run, but this is the year that you're kind of feeling it. I mean, it's just like, I think a lot of the over 50 viewers just dropped out. It's just too inconvenient. And but the same thing with WWE, especially with WWE, because if you go in there and just go, I don't want to spend my life watching wrestling every single night. I got a life. You can watch the one WWE pay-per-view a month, and they'll on the pay-per-view, which AEW doesn't really do, on the pay-per-view, they'll give you enough of the storylines and the videos and everything to where it's like, yeah, you got to keep up. And the negative is that the WWE pay-per-views are 5 matches, so you're missing the storylines of 2/3 of the talent, but you are getting all the main people storylines if you just watch the pay-per-views. So you can do that. But I mean, it is overexposed. It's going to be overexposed because everyone's clamoring for content, and even at an overexposed level, wrestling is going to draw more than not everything, and certainly not more than the NFL or things like that, but more than most things. So if there is, they're going to want more and more. I mean, look at WWE. Like if you look at the LFG show on Sunday night, right? Those numbers are like horrible, and it keeps getting renewed anyway because they're just desperate for new content. And even at 100,000 viewers, which sounds for a national show from WWE, sounds horrible. And an 0.02, I mean, these are not big numbers. The fact is that even that gets renewed every time out because people, number one, I think that there's prestige in the WWE brand to a lot of these stations, and it's better than probably what they're going to put on, because again, unless you're
it tells me that show is cheap for them.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, cheap programming. But wrestling's always survived on cheap programming. I mean, that's what it's always been from the beginning of television in the late 40s. Why wrestling was so you could do it from the studio. It'll give you ratings. You won't necessarily get the best ad rates from it, but I mean, that's what wrestling's been historically in this country. And the one thing that with this country, because of the nature of cable television, it's really helped because, like in Japan, while cable and satellite is there, the fact is that and streaming is there now. The networks are still really big, and wrestling, was very big on the networks, through the 80s and in the 80s especially, and then into the 90s. But since then, it's not that big. So you have wrestling's more of that cult audience in Japan and Mexico. Obviously in the late 80s and early 90s, it was on fire. But Mexico can survive without television because Mexico flourished in the 70s with no television. It's a different market because it's a magazine market and the colorful characters, cultural things and stuff like that. But because now, I mean, they're in a boom. And it's not like that CMLL, right? Which is just doing phenomenal business. It's not like they have a TV show that does big ratings. It's like they do phenomenal business based on it's the thing to do in Mexico City, the word of mouth of tourists, all of those things. It's just a big deal. Whereas, I mean, I think WWE's getting that way too. I wonder, because again, with WWE, the number of people who are watching WWE television, both Mondays and Fridays, is way down. And while attendance is down a little bit right now, it's not that much, and it's still great, and it's at much higher prices. I mean, it's staggering. It's not a surprise, but it's staggering when it's actually thrown in front of you that when TKO, took over this company, it was only a couple years ago, that the average ticket price has doubled, and the attendance is, for this year's attendance as compared to last year will probably be the same or slightly more. I mean, it's down a little bit, but you got to remember, like San Jose did 10 to 11, right? Maybe it does 13 a year ago for the same show. But the ticket price is like way up from the last show, so the gate's way up still. So it's not like that they're making less money on these shows; they're making way more. So, but that's what's like again, Raw's being watched by it's 40% down from and live the same day 50% down, and SmackDown is obviously way down from Fox, but it's even still way down from last year, even factoring out the change in the ratings. SmackDown's way down. So, but you go to the show, and I mean. You watch it on TV, you wouldn't know it doesn't feel cold. I don't know. Watching the WWE this week in San Jose and Sacramento didn't feel cold at all. Felt like a very successful hot product. AEW feels like a in between. Although St. Louis, freaking that St. Louis crowd, which was not a big crowd, that St. Louis crowd felt like this thing's on fire. I mean, that's the thing with AEW. That's the weird one is, I'll watch the pay-per-views and they, of course the matches are good, but most of the time the crowd is good and it feels like this is hot. This is like really hot. And then again, like you learn every week, then you go back to Wednesday, and sometimes it's hot too, but the numbers don't change or anything like that. I mean, they were off San Antonio on Wednesday, right? They were an 1,800 seat place, sold it out, great crowd that was hot for I heard still hot for Collision and hot for the Moscow Dorado match, which was the last match on the taping, and certainly hot for those great TV matches. But it's 1,800 people. It's not like they're hot and booking a 10,000 seat building either.
All right, let's switch gears and let's talk a little bit about WWE because you and Brian talked about it on the After Raw, and then reading through some of the notes in the Observer, and then seeing what the plans are still for Survivor Series, which you said the plan is still a Roman Reigns and CM Punk led team. It just made me wonder about the depth at the main event level. We got Cody and Drew again, and that feels repetitive. On the men's side, we're back to, or actually not back, but now it's CM Punk and Jay because of the injury to Seth. And I thought, okay, injury to a main eventer, you're going to raise somebody else's level into that spot kind of immediately, maybe even before they're ready for it. But that's not what they did.
No, they really are though. No, I mean, on the Raw side, at least with Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed, they are going to raise their stock. The deal is that I don't think that they wanted Braun Breaker to challenge and fail, and I don't think they wanted him to win the title on a Peacock special. You know what I mean? I think that they want his first win to be something big. So it's like he's going to be, I mean, Breaker and Reed are going to be the focal points of the show. It's just that they have this. Before they could put Seth Rollins and Punk on Saturday night's main event because they're building towards Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns down the line, right? And maybe the Punk thing, they'll do a screw job and then go back to the Punk thing later. I mean, it wasn't that bad. But the problem was with this show and that Battle Royal is the decision was made that we just got Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker hot and we need them hot right now because Seth Rollins is gone. That's a huge loss. I mean, Seth was the MVP of Raw. I mean, I think that like sometimes I think that people took him for granted, but then when he was gone, it's kind of like, oh my God, he's been carrying the show because Punk's not there every week. Roman's not there much, right? Jey Uso was really good for a ring entrance, but he didn't carry the show. I mean, Seth Rollins was the guy carrying the show, and then those two guys are there to be, Lex Luger to Ric Flair, right? Where they're our future, and they're going to stand there watching how he does it. And the Reed's not a young guy. I mean, Breaker's pretty young. But that's kind of the thing. So now, they've got Reed and Breaker, but the thing is they didn't want to, after pushing them as the guys who took out Seth, they didn't want them to go in the battle royal. They're not ready for Breaker or Reed to challenge for the title. I mean, some people, they should just do it now. It's like the fact is they're doing it in a strategic way because they don't want to do it on a small show, and they don't want to make them normal by having Jey Uso throw out Braun Breaker. I think they just don't want to do that, so they took him out. But by taking him out, man, I watched that battle royal and I was like, God damn, the depth here. It was like everyone in WWE is good, but they've really got this thing. I used to think about this with AEW too, but with WWE in particular, it's like they've got this roster of guys. They're all good. They can all entertain you. But none of them are top guys because they're not slotted as top guys. I mean, you really, in that battle royal, you had Jey Uso and you had LA Knight, and that was it. Everybody else was, mid-card. And then on the other side, it's worse. Jacob gets hurt, and he hasn't been around a lot, but it's like they had nobody for Cody. Like, I think that they didn't want to go with Solo. They protected Talatonga, but obviously I don't think they're anywhere near ready for him in a pay-per-view main event. I mean, maybe they should go. So you go with reliable Drew McIntyre. It's like he's the only one. I mean, that really surprised me when they announced Cody and Drew, because that was supposed to be Survivor Series. And even then, it's like Cody literally just pinned Drew on a pay-per-view without a controversial ending. I mean, he just pinned him. And now it's like right back to the same feud. And I don't even know where he goes after this unless it's Lesnar, which from the promos and everything, I think they're going in that direction. Maybe they move Lesnar to that spot for us. I don't know. But yeah, but like Lesnar's like Roman. It's like you're only getting a couple dates with him a year. So it's there's depth issues, even though you've got incredible, all kinds of talented guys on the roster, but there are only a few guys that they've put in there that they trust on top, which is interesting because like with AEW, Joe would have been one of those guys where you would go like, well, he's not going to main event a pay-per-view now. And they put him in the main event pay-per-view on a few weeks' notice. His promo ability is really good, but they pulled it off. And it's, sometimes maybe instead of going with Drew or reliable Drew McIntyre, maybe it just, I don't know. I mean, like the other choices like somebody like Solo, which I don't think anybody's going to be clamoring for. I mean, I don't think these, but maybe sometimes just to break up, how many times can you do Cody and Drew? Maybe sometimes you got to put, I don't know. I mean, Talatonga. I mean, who else? I mean, the only one on the SmackDown men's side that they've really, allowed to be in that spot is Jacob, and now he's the one that's hurt.
But you have Priest, you have Black,
but they
guys like that.
But I will say this: the thing is, okay, so Black, right? Yeah, I mean, Priest is a babyface. I don't know that Cody. I mean, you can do it. I mean, yeah, you could. But Priest has been, his basic thing has been getting beat up by Black month after month, and I think he's faded down a little bit. Black, yeah. You know what? I mean, you could do it just to do it, just to kill a month, make a new match. But they just didn't do it that way. Yeah. Black.
And my point wasn't that Braun and Bronson weren't being elevated. It's clear that they are. Like, they're on a path. Just that sometimes when this happens, when you lose a big part of your show, all of a sudden the creative has to get a little creative, and all of a sudden you see the ascension of somebody, and they just decided to do what they've been doing, which is we have Jay, we have Punk, Jimmy. The Jimmy aspect of this is interesting because we know it's related to Roman, but it's not like they took somebody from the middle or from the mid card and said, okay, now you're going to be in. Like, not that LA Knight is the right guy, but that would have been different, a little bit different from what they were doing. So I don't know. I just thought it was interesting because sometimes we've seen in the past, like historically, and this might be just a Vince McMahon thing, where all of a sudden, for some reason, the Big Show is now the champion. You're like, wait, how did this happen? And it was because Austin got injured. Not saying that was the right thing to do, but it was like, oh my gosh, like this is very surprising. They don't need to do that because they're running on all cylinders still. But I just thought it was interesting that they just kind of went to the predictable versus the creative.
But I looked in that battle royal. You know what I mean? It was like, I didn't have any great answers watching that battle royal. I'm like, who you put over? I mean, you could have put somebody over for a surprise. You could have, in about a month. It's not like it's a pay-per-view, but it's Punk. You know what I mean? You want to go with Punk and Dom. You could have gone with Punk and Dom, but I think that, and look, Dom was the last guy in there.
The one that's hanging right there, you would have had to change this whole story is John Cena historically has always been able to get moved into situations that maybe he wasn't really going to be in, but they needed him. You could have done something like that.
You could have. You can always put John Cena into something and make it work. But they made a point. They only got 3 dates left. So, or 4 dates, right? It's New York, Boston, San Diego, and Washington D.C. They have 4 dates left on it.
Eddie has a question here as it pertains to this. He says, do you think WWE will pivot to Punk versus Reigns and Cody versus Randy at Mania, or do you think it'll be more along the lines of Braun and Roman and Cody and Punk?
It could be any of the above. I'm sure they don't really know. I mean, I think Roman and Braun Breaker, you could go there. The only thing is that they just had Bronson Reed beat Roman, and I just don't think that they want to beat Roman with Breaker. But I don't know if they want. they could do that, but I don't know if they want to be breaker, especially if Seth wasn't hurt. I could see them doing that and saying, he loses, but he's in a big WrestleMania match, and he won by losing, but just by being there. But with Seth out, it changes that dynamic. Although Seth, it's possible to be back for Mania. It's touch and go. I mean, I figure 6 months from surgery, we're right at Mania, and I don't know the nature of his surgery, like how much, but usually those shoulder surgeries are about 6. So maybe, I mean, they'll probably be precautionary anyway. So I'm thinking no. You can always do Cody and Punk, but I mean, you could go there. I mean, the thing is, the story that they'd been building up still was Punk and Rollins, right? And then maybe the Punk and Reigns was always a plan. They just haven't gotten there yet, but that was always a plan. I mean, from
they're still on this team for Survivor Series. There could be stuff there.
Yeah, of course. But who knows about Survivor Series now? The only thing I know is that match was at least as of was it yesterday, right? As of yesterday, that match was still on. Because I had people start asking me about with the Wyatt Six and the NFTs, and I thought, oh my God, they really pushed them the last 2 weeks on SmackDown, and it's group versus group. And I was going like, it's horrible for that to be the War Games match. But when I watch TV, it's possible. So I basically asked. It's like, especially with Seth out and Jacob touch and go. I don't know for sure he's out, but my impression, he hasn't had surgery yet, so it's probably a no for Survivor Series. I could be wrong. I haven't got a timeline, but I figure with those two out, then that changes that. But I was told it's still, as of now, it's still the Punk and Reigns team versus the Bloodline team. I mean the Vision team.
I do have the ratings.
Okay.
From WrestleNomics, 477,000.08.
Yeah, well, it's tough competition, but that's obviously, it's a new normal, but that's still under any circumstances. Even with the competition of all those NBA games, I'm not shocked, but it's not a good number. I don't think. Did they have a number for Saturday?
I do not see that in this report.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the new, NXT was 525 and .07. So, and those two are whatever. I mean, like NXT usually has more viewers. Obviously it's based on only TV numbers. I mean, obviously the Dynamite's gonna have way more viewers if you include everyone. And NXT's TV, obviously is a lot more homes than TNT. And 18 to 49, it's usually pretty close. NXT had the opening night NBA game, which is a giant number. So yeah, I mean, this is a tough week. SmackDown was up to where that could be kind of like a decent number. Don't know the Raw rating for Monday until next Tuesday. That'll be somewhat interesting. But yeah, this is just the situation. Obviously, whatever the thing is, that hasn't changed, and I'm sure. I mean, the odds of that thing changing at all are not high. I know that there's been talk about it because of the idea that UFC and pro wrestling have been undercounted, under 35, and fix it, right? How do you fix it? But that would require changes, and the odds of those changes being implemented for pro wrestling are not high. It's not the NFL which is probably the NFL's what got everyone into this change in the first place, because basically the NFL, which has all the power, thinks that they were undercounted, and the difference is the NFL is very, very strong with people over the age of 50, and the WWE and AEW and UFC in particular, UFC more than the other two, skews a lot younger. I mean, UFC skews the youngest, I think, of anyone. I mean, UFC and soccer are probably the youngest skewing. But I haven't seen any negatives on the soccer numbers. But I haven't studied the soccer numbers. But they, I mean, the numbers I've seen have been fine for soccer. So there you go.
What are some of the trends that you've seen with the new ratings? Like, I'm assuming all sports are up.
Yeah, I think most sports are about the same. NFL's been big.
Well, the NFL and the NBA and the WNBA, they've been setting records.
Yeah, but they were doing that already. Well, NBA, yeah. So this was supposed to benefit the NBA. I mean, that's what going in. I mean, the NFL and the NBA were supposed to be big beneficiaries. Other sports, I think hockey's been higher than I expected, but it's so early in the season.
Like the World Series is going to be hard because last year was Dodgers and Yankees, and this year it's Dodgers and Blue Jays. At least in the U.S., it'll probably be.
It'll be giant in Canada, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then what about like because the new season of television started? Like, what's been the discussion about those ratings?
I haven't studied the new season of television much. I mean, I've just seen the shows that go against the wrestling shows like Dancing with the Stars and Survivor and stuff like that. Which I don't know. I haven't noticed a giant difference in that in the entertainment stuff. I mean, there might be something, but no, I haven't studied that stuff. The sports. I mean, I usually like to see all the sports. The college football, it's about what I would expect. I don't know that it's necessarily higher. It should be higher though. I mean, it's kind of like designed to be for big college football. For rank and file, no, but for big college football, it is. Yeah.
All right, this is tangentially related. Trust the Process says, has it surprised you that TKA hasn't used any UFC fighters in guest appearance spot in storylines? I'm assuming he's talking about WWE storylines. Do you think they eventually try using Conor?
It's possible. I think that there's a feeling that you can promote each other on the show and do like you'll have WWE guys in the stands for the wave during a UFC pay-per-view or UFC Saturday show. You'll have often guys out there to do that on Raw, or SmackDown. You'll have a UFC fighter when they're from the town. But as far as doing angles, I mean WWE people really can't do that with UFC. As far as like a UFC fighter doing an angle, I mean the thing with Conor is that number one, can you trust him? And number two, you got to make a deal for him for a price, and he probably wants way too much. For Bilal Muhammad, you could probably get him, and probably not at a lot of price, but he's Bilal Muhammad. You know what I'm saying? So you need someone kind of in between. But how many of them would be good in a wrestling setting? There are some who would be. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe Mackenzie Dern wins the title. Maybe she'll be, because I know UFC really wanted. I mean, WWE really wanted Paige Van Zandt. When she was big, and I don't know, from Twitter today and yesterday, just like I have been so inundated with Mackenzie Dern stuff. I mean, it's every time I freaking turn on social media, it's just the 40th person with freaking Mackenzie Dern weigh in. So you know what I mean? So it's like maybe she'll be the one that they decide, hey, especially if she wins the title.
I mean, isn't that partially how Lola Vice got on WWE's radar? From her weigh-ins and from her social media, from when she.
I think her social media. I don't know about weigh-ins. I never saw Lola Vice stuff on not anything like this ever. I mean, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure she did based on social media. I'm sure Paige Van Zandt the same, right? I don't even think I remember Misha Tate getting this much pub.
Well, do you remember when Gina had the weight cut problem? And all the
Gina had a lot. Gina had a lot. Yes.
and there was that one camera angle that they were trying to figure. Like there were some really interesting camera angles when Gina was weighing in, and especially if she had to, didn't was there one time when she dropped behind the towel and people were like, "This was ridiculous," stuff like that.
The towel thing. Yeah.
All right. So
Gina was a big star, though. I mean, much bigger star than Mackenzie Dern. But maybe if Mackenzie Dern wins the title, maybe it'll spruce things up. I don't know. I can't. I mean, it's just amazing how much I've not looking for and just seen with her, in the last 2 days, going for the championship against Amanda Jandiroba, and I'm just watching this going like, man, I'm UFC. It's like I pray that she wins this championship because the difference in marketability. I mean, they don't have anything. They need to make a star. John Jones is who the hell knows. Conor McGregor's, whatever. They're gone soon enough. Tom Aspinall. Did you hear about Tom Aspinall? His father just goes, don't sign a new contract. Just play out this contract. Go into boxing. That's embarrassing for UFC. You got your heavyweight champion, and Lord knows you can pay him more than boxing.
He doesn't want to go. He doesn't want to go into Zuffa boxing.
I mean, yeah, I know, really. Well, the thing is, though, it's like, yeah, it's like, I don't know if his dad gets it, as far as like, yeah, he hits hard and he can knock people out in UFC. That doesn't make you a boxer. It's just so different. And, I mean, I just remember like years ago when Frank Shamrock, right, when he was really, doing his striking and everything. I remember it was with Frank and I was with Javier Mendez. And Frank is like really getting pretty decent at the striking game. And he's got that mentality. It's like, I want to do MMA, I want to do kickboxing, and I want to do boxing. Okay. And I was with the two of them, right? And Javier just looks at me and goes, no, don't do boxing. Because Javier really, like, he knew, you know what I mean? It's different. It's different. I mean, it's like, if you don't know it and you think, oh, they're just punching, like a stand-up fight in MMA, and if a guy keeps winning by knockout, you go, oh, he should go into boxing, Francis Ngannou. And it's like, I know Francis Ngannou did well against Tyson Fury, who didn't train for crap and didn't take it seriously and almost got, whatever. But then the next guy who did train for the fight, Joshua, that's when reality hit. It's like Francis Ngannou he's got incredible punching power. He's not a boxer. He's just not.
Because they punch really hard back. That's the problem.
Well, but they're good at what they're doing. It's a specialized sport. It's like Michael Jordan playing baseball. It's like he's probably the best athlete in that entire, probably in all of baseball. He was a baseball player.
If MJ was like 5 years younger and maybe he had like a couple more years, I think he could have been halfway decent. But off of playing for 1.5 years after you hadn't played since you were a little kid, like there's no way. But
well, it's like look, if you took 23-year-old Brock Lesnar, okay, and put him on an NFL team, he'd be the best athlete on the team. Braun Breaker actually, but Braun Breaker would be a better athlete than most people in the NFL. And then he played college football. He was just, I guess, considered too short or whatever for his position.
He was like running also like a 4.5 or 4.6 or something, which is not going to cut it.
4.5, yeah, 4.5. But Lesnar for a lineman, I mean, quick, fast, dexterity, everything. He was a football player, and that's where it ended.
Yeah, because he also didn't want to. What did they wanted him to go to the World Football League or whatever?
Yeah, he also started late. 27 is a tough time to start. But yeah, they thought enough of him to go to the world, get a couple of years there, learn to play football because he's such an incredible athlete. But he didn't want, it's like he didn't want to leave the country. So it's kind of like that idea was out.
So John Muse had his piece on Sabu, which was very interesting. And the thing about John's piece is that he basically said, you're looking at peak, and he listed the peak as it was like a little bit less than 2 years.
Yeah, it was only a couple of years when Sabu was kind of that independent phenomenon, and then the early days of ECW when he Sabu and Shane Douglas and Terry Funk really put ECW on the map. And moved on. Sabu eventually, Rob Van Dam and Taz pretty much replaced Sabu as the top guy, although he was always still a key guy in ECW. But I mean, it's an interesting. Talked about Sabu a lot in the last since his death, and he is very influential. If it's just on his career, he was on the ballot before and didn't get the votes. And he was out, but now he passed away, and then you kind of look back and you watch WWE and you watch AEW, and you think about Sabu and you go, if Sabu didn't come along, I mean, a lot of what we see, it might have still happened in other ways, but it might not have. I mean, how many spots? I mean, from so many guys come from the mentality that Sabu came in with, which at the time, all the veterans, this is stupid, you're gonna get hurt, blah blah blah. It changed the game, and like I don't like Sabu. I mean, I just remember people telling me, like, what does Sabu do that's so great? I mean, you can just if you just drank enough, you know what I mean, and you can go and copy what he does. I mean, he was super tough to be able to do it and get up and everything like that, but it was crowd pleasing, and it opened the door for all these people, that just followed in the path. So it's like, I think that, it's funny because I was never a big advocate of Sabu in the Hall of Fame. I mean, obviously Terry Funk was, but I think that, I mean, I will see how the balloting goes, but I'm pretty open to voting for him just because I look back. I mean, it's like looking back. I watch these pay-per-views and just like from both companies, and I see Sabu influence all over. I don't see that with other people like Adam Copeland, right? It's like great wrestler, great talker, bigger star than Sabu ever was. I watch the pay-per-views. I don't see that that's Adam Copeland. This is Adam Copeland. I mean, all the Adam Copeland figures. I do see that with Sabu on every show.
Who would be a comparable person who had that short of a peak who actually got into the Hall of Fame?
Satoru Sayama.
So that would be the comp.
Although he had longer, but as far as the influence, it was 81 to 83 as Tiger Mask. I mean, as Sammy Lee and Satoru Sayama in Mexico, awesome, like one of the greatest wrestlers ever in Mexico. But he was probably only there for a year or so. Sammy Lee, the big matches with Rollerball Rocco and everything. I mean, I've seen some of the Sammy Lee tapes from UK, phenomenal stuff. But he was like semifinals mostly, but great wrestler. But influence-wise, it's just 2 years of Tiger Mask, just a little over 2 years, and he changed the game. He opened the door for the junior heavyweights, and I mean, the thing is that the Tiger Mask legacy culturally remained much bigger in Japan than the Sabu did in the United States. Because I mean, I remember even not that many years ago when the TV shows did that poll of the 10,000 people on the street, who's the greatest wrestler of all time, and they're all going to say Antonio Inoki or Baba, right? And of course they did. Maybe the really old people say Ricky Dozan, although Ricky Dozan, he did die 62 years ago, so most people aren't going to say that anymore. But I mean, the ones, it was Baba Inoki, Okada because he's current, and Tiger Mask were the four biggest. And Tiger Mask, the last time he was New Japan Tiger Mask was 42 years ago, and he was only Tiger Mask in New Japan for 2 years, and he was still number 3 or number 4 of all time with the average person on the street. So that's years later they would release the DVDs of his matches with Dynamite and Rollerball and Kuniaki Kobayashi and people like that. And I mean, those things sold like crazy for the DVD market. So it's like his legacy, plus he opened the door, and again, like so much of the style that we see in Mexico and United States and Japan does date to, back to the Tiger Mask and Dynamite Kid matches. I think that's almost like a template for what, a generation of Benoit and Eddie Guerrero did, and then the next generation that probably watched Benoit and Eddie Guerrero. So, I mean, he's a no-brainer. Sabu, it's interesting. I mean, there's John went through like old issues and everything, and it's funny because there's some quotes there that I've made that like I remember being super embarrassed like 15 years later that I said, and now when I look back and I'm reading it today, it's like, well, why was I so embarrassed about this? Because it's actually, when I look at legacy-wise, it's like, no, of course nobody thinks that Sabu was a better wrestler than Bret Hart or Ric Flair, but that doesn't mean he didn't have better matches in that year because he was doing stuff that was crazy that got over, and they were doing old pro wrestling, and he's an innovator, So now I don't feel so bad, I mean, I remember when the year that Sabu almost won Wrestler of the Year, and I was thinking, God, this would be legacy-wise if Sabu's on this list of Wrestler of the Year. I mean, it's going to be like 10, 20 years later, people look back and go, what were these people thinking? And now it's kind of like, you know what? He was more influential than the guys who won. So, I think Kawada beat him 1 year, if I remember right. And it's like, yeah, of course, Kawada's a million times better wrestler than Sabu was, but Sabu was really influential this year. You look back, in hindsight, maybe those people that voted for him were looking more in the future than I was at the time.
Was it also because of maybe who the people that you trusted as far as their vision of wrestling? Like, was he just a flash in the pan versus is his style sustainable? And now you see it, but maybe back, whenever you were thinking about it, maybe it kind of phased out. And
yeah. I mean, I didn't think that the style was going to change to this. It was funny when we talked about this. I was watching Rev Pro, their Fantastic Mania, Oscar Dorado and Leo Rush match from last weekend. And Andy Quildan, who I think is a very brilliant guy when it comes to observing wrestling, he's doing commentary, and he just kind of matter of fact, goes that like, Lucha Libre is going to be the future style of pro wrestling. And I'm thinking, Andy's pretty smart. Now, I don't think that Lucha Libre is going to be the future style of pro wrestling as a whole, but I do believe that Lucha Libre will be far more influential for sure in the future style of pro wrestling than most, because it's like when you're I mean, what's the best stuff to watch right now? It's Arena Mexico, and people who find it and everything like that, it's like it's the coolest stuff. People are going to emulate that. I mean, if you take away the TV and everything like that, right? I mean, like WWE is you need the TV and the name recognition, the star power and everything like that. Lucha Libre, you can just put it on and the average person will get it. Whereas with WWE, it's like you have to be trained in the personalities, because WWE is all about personalities. It's not a bad thing because they're very successful American wrestlers, always been like that. But some styles, you can just watch them and it's like, oh, it's just fun, but it's not anything you take seriously, and you don't get into the soap opera aspect of it like you would with WWE and to an extent AEW.
When it comes down to it, obviously he's going to have some momentum because we were able to talk about him. I think open up eyes as far as folks to his candidacy. I don't know if I sense that he's going to go in, but it would be nice to see if he's got a healthy number of votes.
I expect to get a healthy number. I don't know as far as who gets in. I mean, I was looking at the Hall of Fame tracker guys, because I mean, I do have a ton of ballots here, but I will not look at them, until probably one more week. I'm probably going to tally the ones that I have, just so I don't have to do them all at once, and then tally the rest of them the next week. But so I don't really have a clue who's going what, other than I do look at the Hall of Fame tracker thing, and it's a small amount of ballots compared to everything. But I mean, the only ones that they had that were at 60 were I think it was like Hamada and maybe one other, maybe Arion. I don't remember, but Hamada for sure. I remember seeing Hamada's name, and it's like, God, I hope it's not like one person, because there are no-brainers, on this ballot. I think Punk and Rhodes are no-brainers. I think Morris Siegel's a no-brainer. Hamada's not a no-brainer, but Hamada I expect to do very, very well. I expect Sabu to do well, but I don't know that he gets in. I mean, I would not expect 60% is a big margin for a guy like Sabu, because people will again just go, it's only 2 years, and you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, he was around for a long time, but like when Sabu was in WWF in 2005, right? It's that ECW thing, right? It's like, they pushed him a little bit as a star and just kind of liked him, but at the same time, it's like, who was a bigger star than Randy Orton, right? Randy Orton was a 10 times bigger star. So I think that will hurt, but I think that there'll be some who were around during those couple of years and kind of can look back at the change in the game, because that's all it really. What he's got going for him is changing of the game. That's his case. His case is changing the game. His case is not. He drew giant houses. He whatever. He was on top, wrestled on the main event of WrestleMania or Tokyo Domes. His case is all about the change game. But and in that case, he's strong. He's really strong.
So someone wanted to know what your dog's name is. The dog's name is Espresso. So there you go. Thank you to Normal Woman for the question. Okay, so now I guess we can talk about something that I'm really interested in, which is Nakamura is the possibility for Tanahashi's retirement match at Wrestle Kingdom. And not only that match, which I think is a pretty interesting match, but also the politics from all three sides.
Oh yeah. I know. It's
I feel for Tony Khan here, because if this is asked of him, and I don't know anything, so I'm just basically, it's all hypothetical to me. If New Japan wants to have a WWE wrestler, Tony has to deal with the idea that the competitor and some dirty boxing going on in there.
Oh, constant. It's funny because if you remember, and it wasn't that many years ago, number one, when Austin put Jericho on the show and Tony Khan said fine, or when they asked him, Bruce Pritchard I think it was, but somebody from WWE calls him up and just goes, we're doing a show down at John Cena and we'd like to have Big Show and Mark Henry and Danielson and Jericho on it, and Tony Khan said fine, which I wouldn't have done in that situation at that point, and he did. But what's happened since then? It's changed. It just has. You can't get away from it. I mean, there's so many things that have happened that there's people who know. I mean, I've heard guys on Voices of Wrestling, and they know. You know what I mean? They know. We know. It's a lot more than stuff that's come out. But it's not necessarily. It's just what it is. It's like WWF's always done that, and in other promotional wars, Jim Barnett did it. I'm sure. Not the same thing. It's a different tactic in 2025 than it's going to be in 1973. And it's a different tactic in 1948 when you have a promotional war in some place. But it's always been the case. It's like Ed Francis. The story of Ed Francis and Rorschach, right? Where when they were warring in Hawaii in '65ish, right? And Ed Francis has he's got his contacts on the islands, right? And all of the luggage of all of the Bay Area wrestlers got lost. All their gear, all everything.
I've never heard the story.
It all got lost before because Ed's guys, for the most part, lived in Hawaii, and they would fly in people come from Japan or on the way to Japan, and that was his circuit, right? But the Roy Shire shows, everybody's flying in from San Francisco on the same flight, so it's not like you got to work at this, right? And so yeah, they showed up, and all their luggage was lost for two or 3 days. And they were only there for 2 or 3 days, and somehow when the show was over, they got their luggage. But that's just what they did. And like now, you go like, oh, you can never do this, blah blah blah. And it would be difficult to do it now, but that's what they did in those days, And so it's always been like this. It's a dirty business, and
you know what that story actually reminds me of? And this is like a professional sports story. But Jalen Rose, who's a basketball player, Fab Five, Indiana Pacers, he told the story one time, and this tells you how long ago this was. Patrick Ewing had a television, like a portable television set, come through baggage. And Jalen Rose knew that it was Patrick Ewing's television. And so before Patrick Ewing could actually get to the luggage thing, Jalen Rose and his teammates took it because they were competitors. It was the Pacers and it was the Knicks. So like that stuff that happened in real sports too. That's actually pretty funny.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a really weird one. I mean, I don't know. Number one, I don't know how serious WWE would be about doing that because they have their own business partner in Noah and Marigold in Japan. But it's a special occasion. I don't know. I would say if it was a few years ago and it's Tanahashi retirement. I mean, again, I wouldn't. If I'm Tony Khan, it's a couple years ago, and it's Tanahashi retirement, it's Tanahashi. I would just go, look, you're not really going to go to the Hall of Fame, remember? And that turned out well. I mean, that was, WWE was so nice about that one.
In a way, though, I kind of thought that it just made Triple H look bad. Like if he couldn't resist the opportunity to look bad.
In hindsight, I think most people will look at it that way. But we still did it, So I mean, as far as it's a tough one. It's Tanahashi's, all-time great. Nakamura's a good opponent. He really is for that match. It's special. I don't know if WWE would allow it. If they did,
what would be the reason for them to allow it? Almost, it seems like just because that's Tony Khan's partner.
I know. That could be it. I mean, if it was because they respected Tanahashi so much and everyone did and everyone should, it's one thing. But would their motive be that even your own business partner's going to use our guy when we send him? I don't know.
Okay, now again,
so everyone, New Japan's in a bad spot. Tony Khan's in a bad spot because if WWE allows, and WWE's in a bad spot because normally they wouldn't. But and again, I don't even know that in the mind of Tanahashi that Nakamura's the guy he wants. But it could be. I mean, from a story standpoint, it's probably if you want to go in there, it's like Okada would be a good one. Nakamura would be a good one. I mean, politically, Okada's probably the best one, but I don't even know that Okada's going there. Omega would be a good one. Omega, in a sense, I would almost, if I was Tanahashi, I would want Omega, and the reason why is that Omega has the knack and the ability and the mind to have a match with Tanahashi that I don't know that anyone else would be able to have, especially if it's a one-time thing. I think Okada, it's like you kind of know what you're getting with Okada.
Yeah, it'd be great. It'd be what we saw in San Jose.
Yeah, but they're older now. I mean, Okada's not. Okada can do it. Obviously, we just saw it on Wednesday, but Tanahashi's way different than the Tanahashi we saw in San Jose. But Omega is very creative with ideas, and I actually think that would be like if I'm Tanahashi, that's the match that I would pick. More than Nakamura. Nakamura, the spectacle would be big, but the match isn't going to be better than an Omega match. And Okada, I don't think it's better than in this situation. I mean, Okada's great, but I think an Omega match with the condition that Tanahashi's in right now would be the best of all.
What would be the biggest drawing match?
They're probably going to sell out either way. If it's the biggest drawing match by Nakamura right now, it's forbidden fruit and it's WWE guy.
Okay, so if
Okada coming back after several years is also big though.
Yeah, if WWE was like, you guys can use Nakamura, but you can't use AEW talent on your show. Would New Japan tell them, okay, we're not going to do it?
Yes, absolutely. Well, they don't use a lot of AEW talent on their shows. I mean, I think Takeshita obviously is going to be
champion.
The main event. I mean, they do a thing where you can't use Takeshita. It's like it's not. The discussion's closed at that.
Right.
It's like no, that's no way. Yeah.
Okay. And then from the AEW side, I think the optic thing that would kind of drive me nuts if I was Tony Khan would be that the WWE guy's in the main event and your IWGP champion is kind of second or third from the top, depending on the Aaron Wolf thing.
Okay, number one, I think they're still going to put the championship match last, but I could be wrong because they probably should put Tanahashi last. But you could do, you can still put the championship match.
How could Takeshita? I guess Takeshita, if the match is good enough, it could follow it. But that's hard, man.
Really hard, yeah. But I went to Liger's and that was early in the show, and they had plenty of people who followed it. And
Tanahashi's got to be in the main event because then you have to do the celebration after the match.
I know, and then everything's a letdown afterwards. But the thing you don't want is, let's just say there's 40,000 people there, and the Tanahashi match is over, and then you've got Takeshita against whomever, right? But okay, though, if it's Takeshita and Okada, though, no one's leaving. If it's Takeshita and Evil, which it won't be, I hope. No, because Evil, it's not going to be Evil because he was wrestling Aaron Wolf. But if it's Takeshita against the wrong guy, I don't know.
So the one positive I think for Tony Khan is if it's this Nakamura match, and you're saying that's the biggest match they could possibly do because of the Forbidden Door element of it, having Takeshita as the champion on the show with more eyeballs is actually a positive, I think.
It is, for sure, yes. And the atmosphere, it's like the only thing is like what are they going to do with Takeshita and Okada? Like in one way, I almost wish that they did like 2 matches, one in New Japan and one in AEW, or maybe 2 in AEW and one in New Japan, maybe do a rubber match or something, and make it, try to make it like the feud of the year or near the feud of the year, because Takeshita is so freaking awesome, and this, it's the biggest match of his career, so you're going to get 100% Takeshita, and with Okada, it's like if he's going to be dragged into a great match, he's going to be great. If he's going to be with a guy who wants to, do a very good match, he'll be very good. But I just, I don't know. I mean, that's a big thing. They spent so much TV time on that. But I mean, when I look at like a Tokyo Dome, like if you have Tanahashi, Nakamura, Okada, and but it's not going to be this card. Okada, Takeshita, and then the rest is the rest. That'd be a big giant. That'll be a big giant Tokyo Dome. But I mean, it's going to be a big giant Tokyo Dome just because it's Tanahashi's last match anyway. So I mean, that's the one thing. But New Japan still is in. The Japanese market is tough right now. I mean, WWE, as hot as they are everywhere in the world, they went to Japan, they didn't draw big. And they go everywhere, and they go everywhere and draw big. And they went to Japan and they didn't drop big. So that tells you just how tough that market is right now.
Do you see how many guys were at the 49er game?
I know. I'll tell you a story tonight. But anyway, yeah, no, I know Bailey and Jimmy and Jay and Naomi and Punk
Was there.
and Roxanne Perez. I've seen them. Is there other
I think that's it. That was the video that I saw.
Yeah. All with George Kittle and everything like that. Yeah. Well, he's a big fan. I think she's legit, like a big fan, as far as I can tell.
Oh, Bailey.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's at games that no one else is at too, because she just comes home for a little while, I guess, to hang out. All right, so Arena Mexico is tonight, and it's the Women's Grand Prix. Is that what it's called?
The Women's Grand Prix. They got a great undercard. It's a 4-match show. The Women's Grand Prix match is probably going to go. I mean, the men's match, I think it went to like 90 minutes. I think the women's match is going to go 50, 60 minutes probably. I mean, it'll be, it's in and out, and everything like that. But I heard talk from this afternoon that they're hoping for a sellout,
Wow.
which would be something, because that would be. I think that would be the biggest crowd in the history of Mexico, headlined by a women's match. Now, last week was the biggest all-women show in the history of Mexico and the biggest in the world since the WWE show at the Nassau Coliseum years ago, and the biggest, other than that, WWE, the first Evolution since '96. The one that Mercedes, they will outdraw that one from what I gathered tonight. That's what everyone was talking like, that this would outdraw that one. But this is that show, like all women show in Mexico. It's like it's not, the women just aren't as good as the men there, and they're not draws and all that. They're they get their one match on the show. People will complain about it, but it's like the men there are just so outstanding, and that's the deal. The people don't, the whatever. But they're bringing in a lot of people from AEW tonight. The Tekla and Sky Blue and Julia Hart and Diamante and Hazuki and Koguma from Stardom and Kanji from Repro England. Along with all their regulars. Mercedes did such a fantastic job with Persephone last Friday, though. I mean, that was a masterful performance. They really had it wasn't like it was a really great match, but yeah, for a women's, this is a women's main event, but they loaded it up with the 3 other matches are all, I believe, going to be great matches. The Pechicero and Zola match is 10-minute time limit, which kind of sucks because they did like 20 minutes plus in England last weekend. But it's still going to be good. And then the Dorada match, it's Mouse Dorada. It's just that's what people come to see. Is that type of match. So the undercard will be really good. Unlike last week where you looked at the card on paper and it was just like, this doesn't really look like a good card. But the last 2 matches, the women, especially Mercedes and Persephone, really brought it. And everybody, they all worked hard. They just aren't as good as look, it was as good as some of those Mouse Dorada and some of those Rudos that they got. That's a skill level that's awfully high.
All right, we may have time for a couple of questions here. So this one's been hanging out for a little while, and it's kind of off the radar of what we usually talk about. So Pat says he wanted to talk about Sukeban. He says they clearly have a different business model than the other companies.
Absolutely.
And outside of our wrestling bubble, it seems it might be working because of all the sponsorships they have and all the media that they've been getting, including having celebrities attend their events. Mm-hmm. And he says, go ahead.
I mean, it's like they've had some shows, but it's not like they have a regular schedule or anything like that. They just have shows every now and then. It's like they haven't gotten a TV deal or a streaming deal that allows them to go monthly. They're absolutely going for a totally different audience than the pro wrestling fan. I don't know if their concept will work because it's a different type. I mean, Glow tried, and they're not doing what Glow's doing at all, but with characters and things like that. And the reality is that while people did watch Glow on television in its day, it really was never successful, just sort of there. And then, it's most of the time when people try to completely reinvent pro wrestling, it usually doesn't work. You can change from within and modify pro wrestling, and that always happens. But to try to completely invent it is tougher. It's for them. I mean, essentially they need publicity and just the idea that it's hot. I mean, they have the women that they have under contract. Some of them are very good, and Saray's like maybe the best in the world, and certainly top 2 or 3. And many. I mean, it's like from that standpoint, you can do it with like the people playing the characters and everything like that. You need I think that you need a weekly thing for character wrestling, like Lucha Libre. I don't think you need weekly TV, although the shows are every week. But I mean, you can just go there and have fun. But most versions of wrestling, I think that you need the TV or the streaming backdrop to get characters over and the promos and everything, because that's so important in the overall presentation. And with them doing so many character things, you need the skits and you need all that, and they're not hitting you every week. Even when they do the shows, it's like they may draw some people, but a lot of it's papered. A lot of it's like the idea we're going to be part of like some convention or something like that, and curiosity people will come, and they may very well like it. But it's hard to it's hard. It's hard. I don't know about that one.
So I guess the question is essentially, like, are they a wrestling play? Are they a fashion play? They have all of these sponsors that WWE and AEW don't really have. Like, what should we pay attention to them? Like, are they someone to keep an eye on, or is it just like kind of a flash in the pan kind of thing?
I think we should pay attention to them, but we're not getting a lot of information from them. And I know people involved in it, and I mean, it's not like they're sending me stuff on a regular basis, and they not just me, but I mean, they need to be publicizing this stuff regularly and getting ink regularly and things like that. And should we pay attention to it? If they get enough of a following, we will pay attention to it. And if they don't, like right now, it's just the following isn't there. I don't hear people talking about it. Like some wrestling fans would be talking about it, and I don't hear wrestling fans talking about it at all. But I don't hear people outside of wrestling talking about it at all. It's not like I get media people calling me, what do you think about the Sukeban concept, right? I mean, never.
Yeah. From my buddy Ryan, he said, and this is World Series related, which is why I'm asking it now. Cito Gaston, the ex-manager from the Toronto Blue Jays, whose real first name is Clarence, claims to have adopted the Cito nickname from a Mexican wrestler. He grew up in the San Antonio area in the 50s and 60s. Do you know who this is?
Suki Cito?
I don't know.
I don't. 50s and 60s was before my time, but I would know all the big stars in Mexico from that period. I don't know. I mean, there was a Suki Cito. I do remember that.
So the only thing I found on the internet is that his buddy thought he looked like a Mexican wrestler who he watched in Texas, whose name was Cito, and gave him that nickname. So some Mexican wrestler from the Texas area in that time frame.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll try to
If
find
anybody
out.
knows,
I'll try to find out if Cito wrestled in. I mean, definitely wrestled in Mexico, and he very possibly wrestled in Texas. Yeah.
all right, let's go with Steven says, since this is kind of relatable, we've talked about this a little bit, but he says, given the injuries to Ospreay and Swerve and the on and offness of Omega, coupled with some, the lower ratings that we're seeing, do you think Tony should try hard to re-sign Jericho and feature him because he believes that they're missing star power? And if you turned him back face, gave him his Judas music back, and have him playing the babyface legend in his final run, do you think that would work?
I don't know. If you go in there and it's like a farewell tour thing, especially because the thing with the Sting farewell tour, that which in the end I think was a giant success because of the last match, but the build to it wasn't because Sting's parents were ill and because of that he didn't know. I mean, it's like he couldn't commit to a lot of dates. Like we didn't have like Sting's last time ever in the Bay Area. I mean, we went there, but we didn't even know it, right? And I remember after it's like Sting's here when you advertise, like, because they didn't know until the last minute whether Sting was going to be there. It wasn't. But Jericho, I mean, we would know, right? It's like he's going to be last time and everything. Maybe. I don't know because the AEW audience was negative towards him, but as far as like a farewell tour, they probably could do that. I don't, it's like I would say from before that as a difference maker to a great degree. I mean, certainly he was for a long time, but I don't know that he was the last year. And my thing is like at that point, he should focus on building other guys, and Jericho can be used to build other guys. But I don't think that it's like I don't see him as a game changer. But the idea of if he went in there and was just like, this is my last year, I'm gonna do a 1 year countdown, hit every city one more time, and Jericho will do the pub and everything like that necessary to do it. I think it would be a boost to AEW if the audience didn't turn on him. With WWE, I know the audience won't turn on him and will embrace it, and WWE will get behind it, and also do it the same way. So for Tony, it's going to be, Jericho's going to be expensive to keep, and to get, I think, for WWE as well. So, man, I don't know. It's with WWE, I'm more positive. With AEW, it's more I think you can tweak it and make it work. I think you can.
All right, last one from our friend Alan. You noted that CMLL is neck and neck with WWE this year in tickets distributed, while AEW is trending down compared to last year despite major shows. How sustainable is CMLL's current growth in your view, and what lessons, if any, could AEW realistically take from CMLL's booking and presentation style in 2025?
I don't think the CMLL booking is anything special. It's like, which is funny because a lot of times when you're looking at like Booker of the Year and you see a company as hot as CMLL's, and you would just go, well, their booking must be great. They're doing record business. So, but as far as what they did, I mean, you can learn a little bit about aspects that you could add to the show, but I don't think that AEW could or should replicate it. Now, can you replicate parts of it and bring the guys in? Yeah, and they do. I don't know. I mean, it's like they're not really booking television or anything like that. So I think that there's some things, but the basic, CMLL just does basic booking, and Tony can do, you beat the champion and you challenge, and you beat the champion in a tag, and then you challenge and all that, and get the title match. Tony does that all the time anyway. So that's not anything novel. It's just with CMLL. I mean, the thing is that it's a product mix. It's like, and again, it's like from a casual thing. It's so different there, drawing the tourists and everything, being part. It's like the part of the culture. It's like, of course, yeah, try to become part of the culture, but you can't really do that here. You're not running the same city all the time. Like if let's just say they did a thing where they relocate to Vegas and they run, like that, and you become like a Vegas touring. But I don't think that would really work to a great degree. I mean, like TNA did that in Orlando, but they were never hot in Orlando. Even they ran those free tapings for years and years and years and years. So I don't know. Other than really focus on pushing young guys and get like a young guy and go with them. Because like Dorado, when they first made the commitment to him, what was he, 2022 maybe? So something like that. And now Dorado's become like a really big drawing card. He's also absolutely fantastic. But that's the only real thing I would say is like sometimes find a young guy and just go all the way with him, and he'll be green in certain ways. But if he's got a certain level of athletic ability and charisma, we can get past the greenness, and eventually when we establish the main event, we got a young guy in a main event spot and put him on top on big shows. So I think that's as far as the booking thing goes. That one maybe, which is not necessarily a CML thing, but just kind of an old school thing anyway. A lot of territories turned around with the young people, young people on top who really weren't as good workers as the older people. But they looked great and things like that. And it worked based on stories and the time and things like that. But again, hook up with celebrities, and then that's really a big part of the CMLL thing, but there's always that type of thing now because celebrities are not, celebrities also want some crossover as well to a wrestling audience. So there's ways to do that. Of course, they mostly would want WWE, but that doesn't mean that they, with the right hookup and the right stories, you can do a little bit of that. So it's a tough one to export. I think the thing to learn from CMLL is, unfortunately, something that will never happen here, which is the value of guys working so many matches and how good they get when they work so many matches. Especially when you get like guys, starting 18, 19, and they're just working 5-6 nights a week. They're when they get 23, 24, man, they can get really good. The style appeals, and you can copy aspects of the style to try to appeal to an audience that doesn't really get into wrestling as much. But the thing is you can't just put these guys on the card. They've got to be on top. I mean, I'll just give examples. Like when I was a kid, and this is one of the things why I always was into Mexican wrestling even when I didn't see it. And I was into the magazines and things like this. I'm so glad I was because as a kid we would have guys come from Mexico and they would come to work here for a year, and I would see them and they would draw to a degree based on their card placement. But more in Los Angeles, which we do on TV Wednesday nights, I would see more of that in the sense of and then growing up with Omoscris, I mean, it's just like that was every kid's favorite wrestler. He came from Mexico. He did not do dynamic promos, but he had a cool outfit and he wrestled a certain style that everybody loved to see that style because it was new and unique, and people who weren't in the wrestling bubble were kind of amazed with the gaudy outfit and the flying style and the light on his feet and all that stuff that they didn't see in our style. So it was like never, it's like I feel so fortunate. So like doing so, I got interested in Mexican wrestling. So I think that like that, if there's a lesson there, again, like Mil Mascaras was a giant draw. He was, like when he would come to San Jose when I was in college, just after his prime, it would be like the two guys would come here in Triple Gates, where Mil Mascaras and Andre the Giant. So, and that's in San Jose, where you didn't have much TV coverage at all, but it was still Mil Mascaras. There's a lot of Mexican people who lived in San Jose. In Southern California and in other cities, it was even more pronounced. And but he always won. He was always main event. He was always presented like an Andre the Giant, like larger than life superstar. Like he would be, I don't know who, like CM Punk was probably the closest in AEW, someone who was pushed and like really pushed as the top guy. So that worked. If you go all the way with somebody, like, but everyone wants to go to a certain level with somebody, and at a certain level, you're just one of the guys. You're not going to really be a giant ethnic draw as one of the guys on the card. You'll draw some, like Rey Mysterio and WWE, Eddie Guerrero. They were never the guy, but they helped, and they did great ratings with Hispanics. But it wasn't like they were the top guy in the entire company. Mil Mascaras was the top guy in the entire company, and that's why he was in many ways larger than life. So it's like I guess the thing is like Mystico's too old to be the guy. Draws probably you want to introduce him now and everything like that, but then you got to really protect him. So I think that is, and it doesn't even have to be like, I'm not even talking like necessarily luchador, but the idea of one of the things that if there's something to learn, it's find yourself a young guy who's really freaking good and just make him a top guy, rather than wait his turn or wait 5 years or put him in developmental or, have him slowly build his way up, because by the time he's there, he ain't a young guy anymore, and I think that's the big thing, as far as especially with drawing younger people that wrestling did and doesn't do now, is that you don't have, the young guy, it could be a young woman too, but you don't have, by the time they get in WWE, the main roster, they're not that young. And with AEW, it's pretty much the same thing. We don't have anybody 21. So we think of MJF as a young guy, right? He's pushing 30, in a real sport, that's not a young guy. In wrestling, it's a young guy. But maybe if there's one thing, because that is the one thing that CMLL does do well, is when their business is down, they go in there and they usually go, okay, our business is down, let's make ourselves a big face superstar. That's what Mystico was. Mystico was a, 20, Mystico's 42, right? His big year, 20 years, was just 22-year-old guy who wasn't great. I mean, he was very good, but he wasn't great. But it was just like, this is our gimmick, and we're going to make him, we're bringing him in as this guy that Fray Tormenta, this cultural figure, brought to us. He's a special kid, and you go all the way with him, and you overcome the hardcore's resentment, because absolutely people don't know this now. Mystico had incredible hardcore resentment. He was booed on Friday nights a lot, just like Lance Jr., right? But the gates went up, and he became a big star, and now he's essentially become John Cena. John Cena, people rejected, booed, horrible, what a terrible thing, why is he on top? He sucks. And now,
I'm obsessed with this Olay Hyaluronic Body Wash. And it's 10 times more vitamin B3 complex. Just one shower transforms my skin from dry to intensely moisturized. For me, it's only Olay Moisturizing Body Wash.
Red Bull gives you wings.
Today we're going to be ranking every single WWE World Heavyweight Champion, and we're going to categorize these WWE superstars from Hall of Fame all the way down to trash. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, ring that bell for notifications, and don't forget that we're going to be giving away another $50 Amazon gift card to somebody in the comments, and I'm going to give the instructions as to how to enter that later in the video. Well, all right, let's go ahead and get started. As you can see, we have our tiers here. We have Hall of Fame, great, good, not good, and trash. Let's go ahead and start with the first ever WWE World Heavyweight Champion, Triple H, who didn't win the championship, by the way. He was given it by Raw General Manager at the time, Eric Bischoff, and Triple H would go on to have a Hall of Fame run with this thing. It was so Hall of Fame worthy that it was called the Reign of Terror, because it didn't matter whether you actually beat him or you lost, Triple H always won, because there were so many transitional champions who would beat Triple H and then immediately lose the belt right back to him. No one really had a long, viable World Heavyweight Championship run after beating Triple H, aside from Batista, which we'll get to a little bit later on in this video. But one of the worst things about this run was just how many WCW guys were just fed to Triple H. The likes of Scott Steiner, Booker T, Goldberg, everyone lost to Triple H, even if they won. Triple H always ended up on top. So he goes into the Hall of Fame category. As frustrating as that run was to watch, it is undeniable that when you think of the big gold belt, you think of the cerebral assassin, Triple H. Next, let's go to the first man to ever defeat Triple H in the first one of these many transitional champions. That would be the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. And I would love to put Shawn Michaels into the Hall of Fame category, into great or into good. But when your championship reign only lasts like on pay-per-view, it's not good. He would beat Triple H in a fantastic first ever Elimination Chamber match, but then would immediately lose this to him. I believe it was at Armageddon during a 3 stages of hell match. It was a fantastic feud that started at SummerSlam and then eventually culminated into that. But the reign of Shawn Michaels as World Heavyweight Champion, as beautiful as it was to see Shawn Michaels back on top, was just not very good. So it's going to go into the not good category. And we're going to keep going with transitional champions. The next one is Lord Voldemort, aka Chris Benoit. Chris Benoit would go on to win the Royal Rumble and then go on to win the main event of WrestleMania and get all of the glamour and pyrotechnics and celebration that comes with winning your first ever World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania at Madison Square Garden at WrestleMania 20, the 20th anniversary of the biggest show in sports entertainment. And then his run after that was very lackluster. He was never treated as really the top guy. The top guy in the company would continue to be Triple H, even though Triple H was no longer the champion. So Chris Benoit's run, it's not as bad as Shawn Michaels. At least he held the title and defended it a few times in pay-per-view and would eventually lose to a member of Evolution in Randy Orton. So I'm going to put Lord Voldemort's reign as World Heavyweight Champion into the good category. But again, another transitional champion. Okay, the era of transitional champions does not end, but this one has two halves to it. Next, we have Randy Orton, who would go on to become the youngest World Heavyweight Champion in WWE history at 24 years old by beating Lord Voldemort at SummerSlam 2005. That reign, his initial reign, was awful, pathetic, and transitional. I think it only lasted about 29, 30-ish days. And of course, who would he lose to? Triple H, of course. That being said, Randy Orton would go on to have a fruitful career with several other World Heavyweight Championship runs. For me, my favorite time with him as World Heavyweight Champion was when he was feuding with Christian and the likes of Mark Henry. I am going to put Randy Orton's time as World Heavyweight Champion as great. Had it only been his initial run, he would have gone down into the trash category. Like, his initial run really was unnecessary and actually kind of hindered his character because it forced him into being a babyface, but he was far better as a heel at that time when he was 24 years old. But the reigns that he had later on in his career and the feuds that he had later on in his career, by the way, he was the last ever technically World Heavyweight Champion before he got brought back recently in 2023. So he goes into the great category for me. Next, let's go to the Manimal Batista, Batista. This was the first true, real World Heavyweight Champion after Triple H. He would beat Triple H at WrestleMania 21 after winning the 2005 Royal Rumble, and he would go on to have an actual meaningful run where he didn't lose to Triple H immediately. He would vanquish Triple H in pay-per-views after WrestleMania, and then would be drafted to SmackDown and would go on to have several feuds there as well. And then he would be forced to vacate the championship after a 200+ day run. He would also go on to have several runs throughout the 2000s as well. And Batista, for me, goes into the Hall of Fame category. When I think World Heavyweight Champion, I truly do genuinely think of Batista alongside Triple H. So he goes into the Hall of Fame category for me. All right, we're gonna go a little bit out of order now. Let's go to Captain Charisma Christian. Look, he had a very short reign as World Heavyweight Champion. His first reign was 6 days, and then he would go on to have a fantastic summer feud with Randy Orton. One of my favorite feuds of the 2010s. It's incredibly underrated. Not enough people talk about Christian versus Randy Orton. And then he would go on to have about a 1-month reign where he would eventually lose the championship back to Randy Orton at SummerSlam. But those 30 days, man, the promos he was cutting, the character that he was playing, the matches he was having, oh, dude, I put him into the good category. Somebody with that shorter reign of the World Heavyweight Championship traditionally for me would go into the not good category, but he did so much in the short amount of time that he had that title. Let's go on to Mark Henry. Oh man, I'm a huge fan of Mark Henry as World Heavyweight Champion. He absolutely reinvented and transformed himself into the curator of the Hall of Pain. That run of him first beating Randy Orton for the title and then holding this thing hostage and beating contender after contender until eventually actually losing the title to the Big Show was such a fun run. Mark Henry was a great World Heavyweight Champion. He goes into the great category for me. I really wish he got another chance with it because his one and only run as World Heavyweight Champion was magnifique. Let's talk about Daniel Bryan next. And Daniel Bryan is another one of my personal favorite World Heavyweight Champions. This does not include when he won the 2 titles at WrestleMania 30 because it wasn't the World Heavyweight Championship at that time anymore, but he did win the World Heavyweight Championship after cashing in on the Big Show after the Big Show beat Mark Henry. And then he would go on to have one of the most entertaining, slimy, weaselly runs as World Heavyweight Champion where he just kept winning somehow. And then, of course, it was the birth of the Yes movement, and which eventually led to the No movement, and then eventually led to many, many great things for Daniel Bryan like Yeselmania. But I absolutely adored this run as World Heavyweight Champion. The ending was, of course, unceremonious, losing in 27 seconds to Sheamus at WrestleMania 28. But I am going to put Daniel Bryan's reign as World Heavyweight Champion into the good category. I just mentioned him. Let's talk about Sheamus next. And Sheamus, man, he really was done dirty, wasn't he? He was basically forced to the fans as one of the new faces of the company, one of the good guys that the WWE desperately wanted you to root for. And we wanted to root for Sheamus. Trust me, we really did. But when you have him bury the hottest thing in WWE in 27 seconds at WrestleMania, people are going to turn on Sheamus. And what's a shame is he would then go on to have a fantastic 2 out of 3 falls match with Daniel Bryan at the very next pay-per-view in what was arguably match of the year, which we should have gotten at WrestleMania. But because it felt like he was being forced, he was shooting to win the Royal Rumble and then just burying a darling that we all really loved. People turned on him very quick. And his reign as World Heavyweight Champion for me just goes into the not good category. Let's go on to, oh dear boy, our friend Dolph Ziggler. His first run, less than like an hour. And then his second run, of course, cut short by not his fault, an injury. But my God, that cash in alone is such a memorable moment that is going to go down in wrestling history. But that is not what we're ranking today. And because that's not what we're ranking today, Dolph Ziggler is our first trash World Heavyweight Champion. And it hurts me to put him into the trash category. Trust me, it really does. But just bad luck, man. Just bad luck. Sometimes it doesn't go your way. Sometimes an ill-timed super kick to the back of the head can do this to you. So he goes into the trash category, unfortunately. Let's go to Edge. Edge is synonymous with the World Heavyweight Championship. I mean, all of his world titles were the big gold belt. Although he dropped this thing like hotcakes, he was always in the picture as a threat to the World Heavyweight Championship. So to me, the rated R superstar is up there with Triple H, Batista, and of course himself, Edge, as the trifecta running the top of the World Heavyweight Championship division. So to me, Edge goes into the Hall of Fame category, the rated R superstar. All right, let's move on. Earlier we were talking about transitional champions. Here's another one for you. How in the world is Goldberg, who was so over with the fans, so hot with the fans, how is he a transitional champion for you? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Yeah, another WCW guy that was eventually just jobbed to Triple H. Goldberg goes into the not good category, very short reign. It boggles my mind how WWE was treating WCW talent, even as hot as Goldberg. It didn't matter who you were doing the job to Triple H. It was like some sort of like weird punishment that they were being forced to go through simply because they were a part of WCW. So unfortunately, Goldberg's run as World Heavyweight Champion goes into the not good category. And it's a shame because I feel like he could have been an awesome World Heavyweight Champion. All right, let's go to Kane. Kane is low-key a great World Heavyweight Champion. He held this thing for a shockingly long time, I think about 150 days. And he was the first ever person to win Money in the Bank and cash in on a World Champion on the very same day. I don't really have like too much detail to dive into since he really only had one reign with the thing, but it was a great reign. And the way that he won it is, of course, iconic and legendary. As much as I don't love same day cash-ins with Money in the Bank, there's no doubt that he set a precedent. He goes into the good category for me. Let's go to Jack Swagger. And let me just go ahead and put him in the trash category, okay? Jack Swagger had no business being a World Heavyweight Champion. He was not ready. He didn't have the charisma. charisma. Frankly, he didn't have the in-ring skills and the in-ring storytelling to make me believe that he is a viable, worthy World Heavyweight Champion. So to me, Jack Swagger's run is one of the most forgettable runs as a World Heavyweight Champion, even though he actually held this thing for a decent amount of days. But this goes into the trash category for me. Next, let's go on to King Booker. And King Booker had a pretty fun run as World Heavyweight Champion. You know, it's nothing special, but this was a weird era in WWE where the big gold belt started to feel a little bit like a secondary title. Like it was all about the WWE Championship at this time. If you weren't feuding with John Cena, it just kind of just didn't matter in WWE's eyes. And that's unfortunately what was happening to the World Heavyweight Championship at this time. That being said, I love King Booker as a World Heavyweight Champion. He goes into the good category for me. Next, let's do Rey Mysterio. And you know what? As beautiful as his win at WrestleMania 22 was, dedicating it to Eddie Guerrero, I hated Rey Mysterio as World Heavyweight Champion because they just continued to bill him as an underdog. Like how do you just keep pushing the world champion as an underdog? I get it, the dude's tiny, that's fine, but it makes it hard for me to get in line with the fact that this man is supposed to be the champion of heavyweights. He was not treated like a top guy when he was world champion. He was always in the defensive. He was always, sure, he would win matches, but it always felt like he was not the person coming out on top at the end of feuds. It always seemed like somebody else came out on top instead of Rey Mysterio. So I'm gonna put the Rey Mysterio's time as a World Heavyweight Champion into the not good category. Now let's go on to the Great Khali, and I'll do us all a favor. He goes into the trash category. The man can barely walk. The man can barely exist. Okay, let alone put on a good wrestling match. The Great Khali won this by, I think, winning a battle royal, if I'm remembering correctly, when the world title was vacated. It's just a run that I'd rather forget. Okay, the Great Khali as World Heavyweight Champion was absolute trash. All right, next we're going to do the Undertaker. But before we do, just know that if you want to win the $50 Amazon gift card, you gotta do two things. One, you gotta leave a like on this video. We are going to check whether or not you liked it. We're gonna ask you to send us a screenshot of your pick. You also have to leave a comment about John Cena, the champion. You can't see him, but I need to be able to see your comment. So you need to leave a comment that says the words John Cena. Okay, don't just put Cena. You gotta put John Cena because then that way I can filter it. Just comment about John Cena. I don't care what you put, just so long as you use the words John Cena. And you gotta like the video. Okay. All right, let's go on. The Undertaker. The Undertaker, kind of a tale of two halves as well. His first couple of reigns as World Heavyweight Champion were super short and super forgettable. His final run as World Heavyweight Champion was a lot of fun. He would go on to lose it because of Shawn Michaels in the Elimination Chamber, causing Chris Jericho to get the win on the Undertaker. But that run, even though it ended unceremoniously with just a kind of a sneaky pinfall because of Shawn Michaels attacking him. Anyways, that run was excellent. That was a great run as a World Heavyweight Champion. He goes right beside Mark Henry and Randy Orton into the great category. Next, we have Kurt Angle. And at this point, I mean, this was kind of like the birth of Kurt Angle. This was Kurt Angle in his wrestling machine phase. He had a great run as a World Heavyweight Champion, winning in a battle royal. He had some fantastic matches. Immediately off the top of the dome, I'm thinking Undertaker versus Kurt Angle at No Way Out, which should have been at WrestleMania 22, and unfortunately it wasn't. That match was a bona fide 5-star classic that would be talked about in the same light as Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker had it happen at WrestleMania. Kurt Angle as a World Heavyweight Champion for me goes into the great category. Next, Jeff Hardy. And Jeff Hardy, man, they just didn't trust him as World Heavyweight Champion for some reason. It was start, stop. He would win the championship, get cashed in on. He would win the championship, lose it the next month. Look, I love Jeff Hardy, I really do, but he was not a very good World Heavyweight Champion. His feud with CM Punk, though, was a tremendous amount of fun and great storytelling. But if we're just literally looking at him as a World Heavyweight Champion, he goes into the not good category. Next, we've got the Big Show, and the Big Show's first run was less than 5 minutes because Daniel Bryan cashed in on him. But then he would go on to have an unbearingly long World Heavyweight Championship run where I think he was eventually defeated by Alberto Del Rio. Oh God, it was so long, it was so boring. I'm inclined to put this run in trash, but at the very least, he defended the title and he held it for quite a long time. So to me, the Big Show goes into the not good category as World Heavyweight Champion. Next, we have John Cena, and this is just not the title for John Cena. John Cena is not the World Heavyweight Champion. He just isn't. He's the WWE Champion. This title on him always looked foreign. It didn't look right. His reigns with this thing also were just footnotes compared to his legendary reigns as WWE Champion. That being said, he's definitely not into the trash category, but I'm not going to be singing the praises of John Cena as much as I do love John Cena. Again, every video wearing something John Cena related, but his reign as World Heavyweight Champion is just nothing to write home about, so it also goes into the not good category. Next, we have Alberto Del Rio. Alberto Del Rio, you may hate this that I just put John Cena into the not good category, but I'm putting Alberto Del Rio into the good category because he had plenty of lengthy runs with this thing and some great defenses. I mean, as much as we, of course, remember the Ziggler moment, let's not forget that there were two people in that moment, and the other person was Alberto Del Rio. Up until that moment, Alberto Del Rio was a fighting champion. He had just defended the title at WrestleMania, and then he would go on to beat Dolph Ziggler and hold the title for quite a bit longer after that as well. Alberto Del Rio was a shockingly decent World Heavyweight Champion, so he goes into the good category for me. Next, we have CM Punk. And CM Punk, to me, man, I really like his run as World Heavyweight Champion. He goes into the good category because similar to Jeff Hardy, it was start, stop. And one of the times that he lost the World Heavyweight Championship, he wasn't even in the match. If you remember, he was left out of the World Heavyweight Championship Elimination Chamber match. It was bizarre. So kind of similar to Jeff Hardy, it kind of seemed like the WWE didn't really trust him as a top guy. So it was just these start-stop championship reigns. It was cool, though, because he got to cash in Money in the Bank on the World Heavyweight title twice, which was cool. But again, nothing legendary or anything that we're going to sit here and talk about for millennia to come. So CM Punk goes into the good category, nothing crazy, nothing bad. Okay, next we have Chris Jericho, and Chris Jericho to me also goes into the not good category. I think people hold his time as World Heavyweight Champion a little bit too high in regard because he was playing that really sadistic character that I am the best in the world at what I do. But most of the time as that character, he was not holding the World Heavyweight Championship. So the times that he actually did have the World Heavyweight Championship weren't fantastic either. The way that one of the ways that he won, remember the Shawn Michaels attacking the Undertaker, he would go on to defeat Edge at that WrestleMania and then get cashed in on by Jack Swagger. It's pretty forgettable. And next we'll put, even though we haven't really had too much of a run with it yet, we'll put Seth Rollins into the good category so far. As of the making of this video, this is before Money in the Bank 2023. He's defended actually the title a couple of times already with Braun Breaker and then Damian Priest. So at the very least, we have a fighting champion in 2023. Even though I don't really have a lot to say about him because he just started his reign and the title just came back after a 10-year hiatus, I'll put him into the good category. But really, it should be unranked at the moment. But hey, that's all of them. Get out of here.
Olay is changing my shower game with 5 skincare benefits. Olay Super Serum Body Wash.
You have the power to change lives, starting with your own. If you're ready to make a career move, we can help. Franklin University was founded on the power of possibilities. Whether your passion is healthcare, education, business, or technology, you'll find the support you need to make a difference. With online courses that accommodate your busy life and a tuition guarantee that keeps the cost of a degree within your budget, your motivation is personal, and Franklin makes it possible.
Franklin University makes it possible.
One-A-Day Women's Multivitamins are formulated to support women's overall health, so you never miss a beat. Another email? No big deal. A quick workout? Yes, strength starts from within. Then it's apron on. You're making dinner with your little sous chef. You show up, and One-A-Day is here to support overall health, including immunity and energy. Shop today. One-A-Day, the one for you.
What is going on, guys? Thank you so very much for joining us right here on Tuesday night. It is Tuesday Night Titans, episode 117 for your Tuesday, October 21st, 2025. I'm your host, JD from New York, as always, joined by the one and the only, the man I would rather see wrestle CM Punk for the World Heavyweight Championship at Saturday Night's main event, more so than Jey Uso. The Solomons, what's going on, bro?
At least it would be different, right? At least it would be different. You got to admit that.
Yes, it would be. It would be vastly different, and
Yes.
I am welcome to change, man. We'll definitely get into that tonight. I hated that decision. After we got everybody's hopes up, and we got each other excited last week. Braun Breaker being the new world champion with a possible Roman Reigns WrestleMania match on the horizon. Jey Uso.
Yeet. 4 letters, 1 word.
Yeah.
Yeet.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
We'll definitely get into that, man. How you feeling about this World Series, bro? Blue Jays and Dodgers, man. Who you got?
Not the Dodgers.
No.
So I'll be rooting for the Blue Jays.
Good man.
If I have to root for anybody. You know who I won't be rooting for? The Giants. Did you see that loss the other day?
No, I turned the game on and they were winning by a decent amount. And what happened? Can you please explain this to me why everybody's losing their mind?
Yeah, so they were winning, going into the fourth quarter, they were winning 19-0. And they lost 33-32, I believe was the final score. So the Broncos scored all 33 points in the fourth quarter. And their kicker missed 2 extra points, which could have made the difference, and so they cut him. And it's like, really? I mean, yeah, I understand he missed the kicks, but let's not pretend like that was the only issue going on here. Like, I mean, I'm a Mets fan, so I've seen some devastating losses before, but how do you give up 33 points in the final quarter and lose by 1?
How do you even conduct the rest of the season after that game?
How do you walk around without, like, not having a bag over your head? That's what I want to know. I have a fucking brown paper bag over my head. I wouldn't want anybody to see my face after that.
Listen, man, they could all join us in Cozumel this winter, man. Just go a little earlier. Anyway, we're going to get into all the pro wrestling news tonight. We got a lot to talk about. Wrestle Dream happened on Saturday. Unfortunately, I am still feeling the effects of that because I was live until 4 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't get to bed till 5. Now we know why the monster over here doesn't go live when he sees that these shows may be a detriment to his sleep schedule. So he actually did the right thing and just covered it on his Sunday show, but we'll definitely get into that. I have a lot to say about that. I know there was a lot of criticisms in regards to the show, so there may be some differing opinions here on tonight's show, so that's what makes the show great. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Jey Uso Punk situation, Saturday night's main event. Where do they go from here? Are they setting up Jey Uso versus Roman Reigns, which is a topic I brought up last night on my show? I hope to God not. Can you imagine they pivoted from Rollins and Reigns, bro, at WrestleMania to Reigns and Jey Uso at WrestleMania? Can you believe that?
Oh, absolutely, I can believe it. Of course. Of course. Well, what's happened here now is that, with Rollins going down, I think we can finally put to bed the idea that this is a work. It's not a work. With him going down, the bloodline has now been effectively, it's been moved front and center now as the key story on the show. So if you don't think that there's not a possibility we could be headed for Roman and Jey, who's the real tribal chief and that kind of story, I could see that. I don't want to see it, but I could see it.
So yeah, we'll talk about all the what ifs coming out of this Saturday night's main event match with Punk and Jey Uso. Andrade, this is the first time we'll talk about the Andrade situation. So I know a lot of that happened after our show last week, so we'll just go over what was kind of left over there in regards to him. He is not going to be back for quite a while, especially on AEW television. WWE can certainly bring him back if they wanted to because he's still contractually aligned with them, but I don't know what's going to happen with that. And the AI situation has been debunked. So if you guys are looking for Grok or ChatGPT to run WWE creative, which in some circles may be better than Brian James, I have some bad news for you. So we'll go over what was reported there as WWE is venturing into the AI territory for creative. And it's going to be a great night. So thank you guys very much for joining us here on Tuesday Night Titans, episode 117. Super chats are open. Get them on in. It's the best way to support what we do here on Tuesday night. Thumbs up. I would love to see at least 1,000 likes. Usually that's the goal every Tuesday. We hit it every Tuesday, so tonight should be no different. If you guys want to follow us on social media, on YouTube, everything you need for both of us are linked down below in the description of this very video. And please, after the fact, leave a comment. Helps us out tremendously with the YouTube algorithm down below. Sound off with any of the discussion that you may like or hear from tonight's stream down in the comment section below. All right, brother. Lead us. Where are we going?
Well, since we didn't get a chance to talk about it last week, why don't we start with Mr. El Idolo? Let's talk about the Andrade situation. He was quite the star last week. Even though he has not been on television in almost a month now, he has been the topic of conversation, so I think we'll start there.
Andrade. So I know a lot of people were discussing this last week. I made 2 specific videos myself on it last week, and this is just a really fucked up situation. We go from Andrade being fired by WWE with cause, according to them, and he had supposedly, we don't know how many, supposedly failed multiple wellness tests from WWE. Now, you guys know what the policy is, or at least was. I don't know how much of it they're upholding nowadays. First violation is 30 days, second is 60, third is termination. So we don't know how many he failed. I know a lot of people kind of piecing the puzzle together. Maybe they fired him because he had failed 3 or more multiple wellness tests. We don't know. So he was fired, and a lot of people were thinking, and Andrade was probably thinking the same way, that if they fired him and they're not going to pay him, he doesn't have a 90-day non-compete clause, which usually comes with a WWE release or firing. So he quickly jumped ship to AEW. He shows up on Dynamite for their, what was it, the 6th anniversary show, I believe it was? And he attacked Kenny Omega, one of the biggest stars in the company, laid him out, and supposedly the rumor was that it was going to be either Andrade versus Omega at Wrestle Dream or Kenny Omega and Kota Ibushi versus Josh Alexander and Andrade at Wrestle Dream in a tag team match. Kota Ibushi wrestled Josh Alexander and broke his leg, and Tony Khan did say that his injury also derailed some creative plans going into the pay-per-view this past Saturday. So after that, Jason, it was week after week after week where we didn't really hear anything about Andrade. Commentary didn't mention anything about Andrade. They didn't mention his name at all. They didn't mention the spot with Omega. Andrade
didn't exist.
He was a ghost. He did go on to win the Crash Lucha Championship in Mexico, but that was the only thing that we really kind of seen Andrade do. And then a report came out that Andrade is still linked to WWE, and WWE all of a sudden enforced Andrade's 90-day non-compete, but without pay. So a lot of people were like pro Andrade after this, and I'm like, hold on, we can feel bad for Andrade, but Andrade's not a completely innocent party in all of this because clearly there was a bunch of fuck-ups along the way until he made his return on AEW television, and why any of that happened without proper due diligence or discovery or research, nobody really understands why all those things happen. So this is coming from, I believe, PW Insider. According to PW Insider, they provided a significant update on Andrade. It's been absent on television. We just went over why. There was an initial belief
even within WWE circles, that the Andrade situation was different from a standard release. The initial belief, even within WWE circles, was that since Andrade was cut outright due to wellness policy violations, he was not going to be paid his 90 days and was free and clear to begin performing elsewhere. However, Andrade appeared on AEW, he began working dates in Mexico, and WWE reportedly contacted him to clarify the terms of the release. They went on to say that WWE informed Andrade that he was still subject to the standard 90-day non-compete period, even though he would not be paid for it. Mike Johnson says, we are told that after he began making his appearances in Mexico and the United States, WWE clarified to Andrade that even though he was not going to get the traditional 90 days, following his release, Andrade was still subject to the 90-day period where he cannot perform elsewhere. The report shed light on WWE's reasoning for enforcing non-compete periods without pay. A source explained to PW Insider that the company wanted to prevent a situation where a talent could violate company policy and immediately begin working for the competitor. The company was not going to have a system in place where someone could theoretically leave the company due to violating their policies and then walk off to end up elsewhere the very next day. The situation was described as a loophole the company would not allow to exist. So they enforced this 90-day, and it went into effect. The report noted that Andrade is advertised for dates in Puerto Rico, which he was there, but he was not able to perform because that's still legally in the United States. He could go to Mexico and wrestle, but not in the United States. But the belief is that he will not be appearing there, and he did not. Furthermore, he is also advertised for an autograph event, and he's supposed to wrestle for House of Glory on 11/15 in New York City, but based on the circumstances there, that is still a wait-and-see thing, and nobody knows about that either. This confirms earlier reports from Brian Alvarez that Andrade was not injured, and that a non-compete issue was holding up his return to the ring. So then it went on, Jason, where Brian Alvarez found a excerpt. I'm not going to read it because it's just a lot of legalities that I don't really care about. He found an excerpt from their existing contract where it does say that it is now up to a year, and it's in writing. So that is the current TKO policy for termination with cause. And Andrade is looking now at a situation where he's out for 365 days, a full calendar year. I know you talked about it. I know I talked about it in multiple videos. The one thing I don't understand is how hasty Tony Khan was to bring Andrade back to television. And the first thing that I mentioned was Andrade not knowing, which, I mean, there's a possibility of maybe kind of not knowing and thinking that he may be in the right there, but given WWE and how petty they are and how they usually operate, I don't give them any benefit of the doubt, number one, so I don't know why the talent would. But then on Tony Khan's side, why he was so hasty to get Andrade back to television, and where's his legal department that is supposed to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G about, due diligence and making sure all the bases are covered and checking if this guy has any non-compete and how long is he going to be out and maybe it's not the right time to bring him back and blah, blah, blah. They absolutely created such a shitstorm of nonsense, and it's all for their own doing, and none of them look good in this situation whatsoever. Furthermore, I don't really understand why Tony Khan wanted to bring